Good morning, everyone, and welcome to A Moment of Hope with Upward Transitions. I'm Carla Stinnett, and today we are extremely excited to bring our special guest on to our broadcast today. This is the Executive Director of the Homeless Alliance, Dan Strawn. Hello, Dan, and tell everybody hi.
Hi, everybody, and hi, Carla. Thanks for having me here this morning.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. The Homeless Alliance is one of the community partner agencies, not only of United Way, but also one of our partner agencies that we work very closely with. So it's going to be fun to kind of learn some of the things that we share in common as far as our mission and how we work with clients, and even some special things this holiday week that's going on at the Homeless Alliance. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about the background of how the Homeless Alliance began and how it serves its clients in the process.
Sure. So we began when a group of community leader types were having lunch at the old Lunchbox Cafe downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And Carla, you're of an age like me that remember the Lunchbox Cafe.
Too. They were closing about every half year or something like that, and you'd get this rush. It was a great place.
For those of you that didn't know it was on Sheridan, and it had these plate glass windows. And back then, 2003, the bus station was right next door to it. The downtown library, which was kind of Oklahoma City's de facto day shelter, was just a block north. And then, of course, City Rescue Mission was down the way. And so you could sit in the lunchbox and just kind of watch a parade of stereotypically homeless looking people walk back and forth. And so these business people were having lunch, and one of them, Nick Noble, the son of Lloyd Noble, the grandson of Sam Roberts Noble, watching that, said to the other people at lunch, you know, there's just got to be a smarter way to do homelessness. Feels like every year we put a lot of money into the system, and numbers never really get better, and we're all smart business people, so we ought to be able to figure that out. And that group, went to 3 cities that had a reputation for being smart about homelessness. We went to Columbus and Phoenix and Philadelphia. They all had really interesting systems. None of them were a system that you could just kind of pick up in whole cloth and drop on Oklahoma City and have it work. So we came back and we did got a consultant to help us do a needs assessment and gaps analysis. And what she came back with was really clear. We were the only city our size in the country that didn't have a day shelter for homeless services. And it's a big spread out city with a less than robust public transportation system, and just getting to services and knowing which services you needed was a barrier. And so we knew from that we needed to develop a day shelter, and we needed to develop a one-stop shop for a multi-agency resource center. We also knew that an ad hoc group of volunteers getting together once a month for lunch to talk about those issues weren't going to be able to make them happen. And so the group incorporated as the Homeless Alliance. I became our first and only employee, and the rest of the people at lunch became our first board.
That's awesome. I hadn't heard that story, so it's good to hear the background on that.
Well, and I would say when they knocked down the lunchbox to build the new BOK tower, I called the city planning director at the time, Aubrey McDermott, and I said, you know, that big red neon sign that the lunchbox had, I want that. And for our place. And she said, you know, Dan, that's a iconic bit of Oklahoma City history, and it belongs in a museum somewhere. And I said, well, but I called dibs. And she said, dibs noted, thanks for calling. But about 6 weeks later, that sign showed up with a construction crew, and they'd completely replaced the neon, and they hung it over our day shelter serving line and wired it up to electricity. So now we flip on that old lunchbox sign and turn on the neon whenever we're serving a meal in the day shelter. It's really nice.
That is too cool. That is a great story. Yeah, I just recently toured the day shelter for the first time, and it's a wonderful place. And as far as the facility and setting, the way you have it set up and everything, I was very impressed.
Thank you.
So, the past 18 months have been challenging for everybody, including our nonprofit network in Oklahoma City. So how has COVID-19 impacted the way you serve your clients? What did you do?
Oh gosh, it was boy, just so much. Our day shelter, which you've been in pre-pandemic, we were seeing 350 people a day in that day shelter, and early on, before we had vaccines and really knew what was going on, you couldn't put 350 people inside a building like that, and so we moved kind of all of our services outside into the kind of the mall area between the resource center and the day shelter. And then we worked really closely with the city county health department and the state health department and all 7 of the overnight shelters to kind of come up with a plan. And we installed germicidal UV lights in the day shelter, and City Rescue and Salvation Army did the same. We worked with City Rescue to develop an isolation shelter. So if anybody showed up at any of the 7 shelters who was symptomatic or later on tested positive, we could send them to this isolation shelter. When we put together a quarantine shelter at Grace Rescue Mission for people who were particularly vulnerable, older people experiencing homelessness with co-occurring conditions, liver disease or lung disease, that kind of stuff. And then starting in September, we started mass testing at all the providers. And between September 1st and January 15th, when vaccines became available, we did over 6,000 tests of the homeless population in Oklahoma City. And during that whole time, our test positivity rate never rose above 4%. And that was at a time when in Oklahoma City, the general population positivity rate was like 25%. And so because the population that we serve is so vulnerable, because so many of them live in congregate environments, being able to keep the pandemic out of the population as well as we did. And when I say we, I mean the whole continuum of care serving the homelessness. It was really quite an achievement.
Yeah. Speaking of that continuum of care, one of the beautiful attributes of Oklahoma City is that our nonprofit network works together. I mean, we collaborate well. We don't try to necessarily compete with one another. We try to meet the needs of the citizens in our community. And one of the wonderful things is how Homeless Alliance and Upward Transitions, the Jesus House, and all these others work together to accomplish these goals that we're trying to achieve. And I know when Upward Transitions, we went to remote work during COVID, but we still were able to do our one-on-one case management with our clients through that time too. So when we talk about your population, the homeless population, what are some of the biggest needs that you see or observe in the clients that you serve?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously the biggest need is housing. It always begins there. And in today's market, as you know, Carla, I mean, it's just getting tougher and tougher. Right now we have, I think, like 25 households that have a housing voucher in hand and can't find a unit that will accept them. And I've never seen it that bad. The market is just so tight. But other things, I mean, for unsheltered homeless, winter's coming, and we're always looking for coats and hats and gloves and dry socks and those chemical hand warmers that can be so really life-saving for unsheltered homeless people in Oklahoma City. As a community, we really have to do better with second chance employment, to allow people to have an income that can support them in housing. You know, we do not have enough mental health resources to address the issues, much less substance use treatment resources. Some of these things will be addressed with, or at least partially addressed through, you know, MAPS 4 projects that are slowly coming to fruition. But that's, you know, that's 5-10 years out for the whole thing. And we have a lot of work to do in the interim.
Yeah. And having that affordable housing, you know, I know that community leaders are talking about that. Like we're somewhere around 8,000 units short of,
yeah. And it's hard for people to understand sometimes, because Oklahoma City has a very affordable housing market if you talk to the chamber. But what the chamber is talking about is the market is really affordable if you're making 80 to 120% of area median. So that's 40 to 60,000. And what's affordable to you at 40,000 is in no way affordable to someone who subsists on Social Security income, which is like 9,000 a year. And so at that lower end of well below 80% of area median income, we just do not have housing stock. We don't.
Yeah. The inventory is challenging for sure. And, you know, we've encountered Section 8 vouchers with clients and couldn't find a place.
It's the crazy. I mean, 2 years ago, having a housing choice voucher, that was a golden ticket. I mean, you had it made, and now I mean, it's just really tough.
Yes. So in looking at how we do collaborate and support our clients, do you have any ideas or stories about some of the clients that we've collaborated with? Or
oh yeah, sure. So I mean, and boy, Carla, I mean, the people at Upward Transition certainly know this. Homelessness is a complex thing, and literally for every client we see, it is not one thing. It is not, I lost my job and so I'm homeless. It's, you know, I lost my job because I've got bipolar disorder and I can't access appropriate treatment for it. So I've been self-medicating with alcohol, and between the alcohol and the bipolar, I've wrecked my physical health, and I can get primary health care for the kids with Sooner Care, but I can't access primary health care for myself. And so even when I have a job, I can't keep it very long because my absenteeism is so high. And because that's been going on in my life for the last 5 years, 3 years ago, I got evicted. And now even when I have a job and I have some money, nobody will rent to me because I've got an eviction history. And because that's really frustrating, I misbehaved a time or two, and I've got a bunch of court fees and fines that I can't pay. And there is no single agency that can address all those issues. And so we have to come together. And I didn't even mention the one that we always send to you, which is the person who's lost their ID. And in a post 9/11 world, it is not simple to get ID. So, and you have to have that to do just about anything concerned with housing or treatment. So all those agencies, I mean, you can't just say to that person, hey, I can help you with the bipolar, but with everything else, you're just going to have to figure that out. And maybe they figure out that they can go to Hope and Legal Aid and Upward Transitions and Salvation Army, but we have to, and we're really pretty good at it in Oklahoma City, working together to provide those wraparound services that help that family get into housing and stay housed. And part of that is just the information technology infrastructure through HMIS that allows us to share data on shared client. So we kind of each know what the other is doing, which is super important. One of the things I think about, Carla, is that I've lived here all my life, and if there's a silver lining to being a disaster-prone city with tornadoes and wildfires and bombings and all that kind of stuff, is it has taught us that the government, nonprofit, and faith-based sectors just have to work together to really make a difference in the life of the community. And when you're talking about the life of the community, that starts with each individual family that we serve. And so we as a community of providers have gotten pretty good about recognizing that we are all pulling on the same rope, and we need to figure out how we can do that the best way.
Yeah. Now I think they call a hint of that is the Oklahoma standard, right? I mean, we have each other's back, and we do come together anytime there's a community need like that. Yeah. So, well, in closing, our time's about up here. And so I was just going to ask you, what are you thankful for this Thanksgiving holiday?
You know, I mean, this job, I love this job. It's to be able to come to work every morning and know that at some small level, you're making a difference in the life of the community. I mean, what a blessing that is. You know, not everybody. When I was a banker, I mean, I like being banker and taking care of other people's money, but it doesn't really compare to taking care of people.
I agree. I agree. Well, tell us a little bit about the Thanksgiving meal.
Sure. So we'll serve a Thanksgiving meal for our day shelter clients tomorrow. It'll be lunch, and there'll be turkey and all the trimmings. We have about 1,400 people in our various housing programs right now. And so all the case managers have been working really hard to make sure they all have what they need for a Thanksgiving dinner. And so I'm hopeful that our clients and our day shelter guests will enjoy the day.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dan, for being here today as our special guest. And can't thank you enough for all that your team at the Homeless Alliance does for our community. And I know that Upward Transition loves working with the Homeless Alliance, and the work is meaningful. And you're right, it does help you get up every day and be thankful for the work that you do and being able to invest yourself in people's lives. And that's important work. So anyway, well, we'll say goodbye for now. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and we'll see you next week. Thank you again, Dan. Take care.